So now that several years have come to pass, I figured it'd be interesting to highlight some of the oldest spirits that we have in FGO today, especially since we're a long shot from the oldest spirits that we used to have. By the way, if you haven't already, make sure you guys sign up for the Patreon. You get access to early content and priority on your requests. So the first person we're going to be looking at, one you may know from Okeanos, this starts back at 2000 BC in Greece, is the towering Minotaur Asterios. So for his background, per the agreement, his father, King Minos, prayed to Poseidon and asked him to give him a bull. Poseidon said, cool, I got no problem with that. Just make sure that you give it back in the form of a sacrifice. And King Minos liked the bull so much that he said, you know what, I think I'm gonna keep that. This offended Poseidon to the utmost degree. Oh, so you think you above the game now? Bet. And then Poseidon put a curse on King Minos that forced his wife, and I can't make this up, to have a sexual infatuation with bulls. Welcome to Greece, fellas. So King Minos was actually his foster father, his real father being a Cretan bull. And thus you have the birth of Asterios, a man who had the body of a human but the head of a minotaur. His father didn't know what to do with him, so he ended up tossing Asterios into a labyrinth where he would sacrifice multiple children to the monster at a time to keep him locked in and keep him satiated. Eventually he was taken down by the hero Theseus, and unfortunately for all the things that Asterios went through, his untimely birth, his father abandoning him, his death was ironically his only salvation. From 2184 BC, ancient Egypt, we have Nitocris, Nito being the final pharaoh of the 6th dynasty. However, though she was a ruler, everything about her position wasn't all gold. For one, she more so had the position because the nobles just wanted her to be there. It was more so of an acting role so they could control things from the sideline. But the worst thing about it all is that these same people used this to take the lives of all of Nito's brothers by drowning them. And naturally, she forever held a grudge against them for that. So much so that she decided two can play at that game. So Nito calls up a banquet. She says, I want everybody to pull up. We're gonna have a good time. Brings all of these nobles to the venue. In the same way that they took out her brothers, she filled the entire room with water from the Nile River and took all of their lives. Now we're even. And then of course she took her own life because she couldn't bear to live with this on her conscience. From 2420 BC Persia, you have the classic hero Arash, well known for the deeds that he accomplished in the battlefield. At the time that he was around, Persia and Turan had been going back and forth for at least 60 years, and it was getting to the point where both the leaders were thinking the war itself costed more than what it was worth. So they came to an agreement. They decided to make peace, but only on the condition that somebody, one of their warriors, had to go out and create the boundary line that would separate their new territories. And of course, Arash's king decided to pick him because he was the best archer in their army. He was just that nice. So Arash climbed all the way up to the top of Mount Domovan, and since this is a story of mythology, the shot that Arash took to make this boundary line, not only did it take all of the energy that he had to make this shot, but he put his soul into it as well. So when he released it, his life went along with it, which is why he has the phantasm that he has now. The arrow itself was so incredible that there's multiple stories about the distance or how long it was in the air. Some say that the arrow was in the sky for at least 6 to 12 hours. And then you have other anecdotes that say that the arrow went for at least 3,000 miles. Either way, Arash with the bow is nothing to play with. Moving into 2700 BC Uruk, you got the OG himself, the traditional hero, the oldest hero, King Gilgamesh. And then of course alongside him in the same time, the one sent out to persecute him, Enkidu. So Enkidu pulls up to put Gil in his place. Him and Gil throw hands, they hash it out, and they end up becoming homies. And when I say Gil is the oldest hero, no, we're not talking about the hero of modern day, the White Knight or the Captain Save-A-Ho. We're talking about the old school, going on adventures, fighting against the elements, and going up against some of the most notable creatures to exist. One of which, from his very lore, is of course the Bull of Heaven that was cast out by Ishtar. One that him and Enkidu fought together once they became cool, and they put the bull as well as Ishtar on their back. This led the gods to striking down Enkidu, and Gil was left on his own to heavily reflect on who he was as a person now that he had lost his best friend. Understanding that his reign as a king wasn't the most practical, got rid of his arrogance that you see in Zero and doubled down on the rest of his existence as the wise king that you see in Babylonia. Another big hitter we have coming from this era, you may know her as Big Mama, is the OG Earth Mother goddess Tiamat. Now I know a lot of people may have thought that she would be number one, considering she is the one that came out of the primordial sea that existed before the planet and gave birth to the existence of the things in the world and life itself. And from an age perspective, that may be true. She does predate everybody else. But from a timeline perspective, chronologically, there's still many entities that come before her. And then of course, after the birth of the world and all of her children started to flourish, they ended up going against her, and she was taken out by one of her own descendants, that being the patron god Marduk, starting out from 3300 BC India. Now we're getting into the real old heads. We got Kamadeva, or just Kama, the same spirit that has hijacked Sakura's body, well known for being the god of love in the Hindu pantheon. And naturally, he has hijacked the body of Sakura because Sakura, in a similar fashion, has always been a character that leads with compassion. Just another reason for her being a perfect vessel. So in his background, he more so functions as the role of Cupid, and he brings people that need to be together and makes them more acquainted. In his case, he had a bad day on the job. One day he caught the mother goddess Parvati trying to catch the attention of Shiva being one of the three supreme deities. Shiva said, "I ain't got time for all that. I'm trying to meditate," completely ignoring Parvati and focusing on himself. So the other guys in the pantheon told Kama, "Hey, we need Shiva to focus on her. That needs to happen." Kama, just doing his job, shot Shiva in order for them to be together. And unfortunately, Shiva responded by opening his third eye and frying Kama alive and turning him into a pack. And now they call him Pac-Man. Then you have King Rama, the lead and the focal character of one of the biggest epics in Hindu myth, Ramayana. As a prince, he ended up getting set up by his own cousin for political gain. This put Rama in a 14-year exile in the forest. Not just him, but he was with his wife, Sita. And while they were there, she just so happened to get kidnapped by the demon king Ravana. Unfortunately for him, Rama didn't play those types of games, and he did everything in his power to get his wife back. He rounded up some help from the king Sugriva. They pulled up to Ravana's kingdom, and Rama ended up slaying the demon himself and getting his wife Sita back all the same. And it was at that point where he went back to his domain and was finally crowned as the king. Rama did seek repentance for taking down the demon king, because although he was flawed in some aspects, he was a decent person in other ways. And reluctantly, he had to take the demon king's life multiple times because he had 10 heads when he really didn't even want to. And Rama regretted that they had to cross paths because of the fated curse that him and his wife would eventually be separated. From 4000 BC Mesopotamia, we got Ishtar and Ereshkigal. In our case, two beings that decided to hijack the body of Ren. Ishtar being the goddess of beauty and war, and Ereshkigal being the goddess of the underworld. And the reason that they both use Ren as a vessel together is because they both used to be the same entity, that being Anana. Over time, the two of them got separated and their identities became their own unique thing. Ereshkigal being the older and Ishtar being the younger. There's even stories of Ishtar going to the underworld to go against Ereshkigal. Ridiculous idea going to her domain to try to pull this off, but she does this anyway, and Ereshkigal ends up sending Ishtar to the creator. You have come to the right place. From 4800 BC India, you have Vritra, a demon that's well known for ravaging the Indian lands, as far as we can see, that's said to have the body of a human and a serpent. Most notably, she's the greatest enemy of the king of gods himself, Indra, and after a long fought battle of going back and forth between the two, he finally was able to get off his Vajra, which is an ancient super weapon that practically one-shotted Vritra through the chest. This was after going through 99 fortresses just to get to her. The payout was tremendous. And while we're on the topic, we gotta get into Shiva's wife, Parvati, Durga, and Kali, all of which just being different variations that she comes in. Parvati being a mother goddess, to Kali, who is a literal goddess of time and creation, higher than all of the other deities in the pantheon. And then, standing above them all, you have the original form of Space Ishtar, that being Ashtar Origin, the primordial goddess from the origin universe, and she's over 5 billion years old. The greatest of grandmas there is. She, however, is the final goddess to survive her universe after the rest of them got wiped out off screen. So as far as we know, there are more people of her kind that are stronger and even older than her. Just putting that out there.